Neanderthal cuisine, rotting meat with maggots, ancient eating habits. Imagine a world where the culinary practices of Neanderthals included dishes that might make modern diners cringe, like rotting meat filled with maggots. This striking image sets the stage for a deeper exploration of how these ancient clans approached food and survival. Picture this. Outside, the air is frigid, with temperatures barely above freezing, while inside a cave, a group of Neanderthals gathers around a flickering fire. Adults, children, and even an elder sit on flat stones, eagerly awaiting the cooking of a gazelle they successfully hunted earlier that day. Lacking pots or utensils, they employ a methodical technique to prepare their meal, using tools crafted from sharpened flint to cut the meat into manageable pieces. For those still feeling peckish, there are seeds, remnants of tubers, and, notably, the local delicacy, decaying meat swarming with nutritious larvae and maggots. This vivid scene could have unfolded 300,000 years ago in what is now Central and Western Europe. However, piecing together the daily lives and dietary habits of Neanderthal communities is a monumental challenge. Fortunately, ongoing scientific research is gradually shedding light on these ancient practices. Recent studies suggest that while we may not label Neanderthal food practices as gastronomy in the modern sense, there were indeed cultural customs surrounding their meals. One such study, published in the journal Science Advances, posits that the consumption of worms may explain the remarkably high nitrogen levels found in Neanderthal bones. For decades, analyses of these bones have revealed nitrogen isotope levels that often surpass those found in carnivorous animals like wolves and lions. Human metabolism does not support the intake of protein levels typical of specialized carnivores, creating a perplexing question. How could Neanderthals exhibit isotopic signatures akin to extreme carnivores if their bodies were not equipped for such diets? Einara Sistiaga, a researcher at the University of Copenhagen, emphasizes that there are factors influencing Neanderthal diets that we often overlook because they fall outside our contemporary food perceptions. For instance, the idea of consuming rotten meat filled with maggots is unthinkable today, except in certain cultures like the Inuit, who ferment seal meat underground. The research indicates that the signature dish of Neanderthals may have been rotting meat infested with fly larvae, which could account for the high nitrogen levels found at various archaeological sites. The larvae, thriving on decaying flesh, possess even higher nitrogen levels than the meat itself. When consumed alongside the meat, they significantly alter the isotopic profile of the individual who ingested them, namely the Neanderthals. This practice may have been a strategic choice to enhance fat and protein intake, particularly during the colder months. However, the study is not without its critics. Manuel Dominguez Rodrigo, a professor at the University of Alcalá in Spain, cautions that the hypothesis is highly speculative. He argues that the elevated nitrogen levels in prehistoric populations could stem from various factors, such as the consumption of manure, which would yield similar nitrogen levels in bones. He stresses the need for a transition from speculative ideas to scientifically verifiable claims. Until then, the notion of high meat consumption among Neanderthals remains more of a heuristic than a proven fact. These uncertainties highlight the complexities involved in reconstructing the diets of extinct species that thrived for millennia in ever-changing climatic and geographical conditions. Sistiaga notes that studies like these contribute valuable insights into the puzzle of human evolution. In another intriguing study, published on June 17 in the journal Frontiers in Environmental Archaeology, researchers examined the butchering techniques of two Neanderthal lineages that inhabited nearby caves in the Levant region. Anna El Jalon, a researcher at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and co-author of the study, explains that the differences observed between the two sites suggest a degree of cultural diversity regarding food practices among contemporary Neanderthal groups. Both communities utilized their caves for similar purposes: residential areas, cooking, and waste disposal. Yet they developed distinct methods for processing food. This indicates that culinary traditions were likely passed down through generations, with each community maintaining its unique approach. While the evidence does not allow for precise reconstructions of specific food preparation techniques, the researchers propose that variations in taste and cooking skills likely existed. Different Neanderthal groups may have used similar ingredients, but created their own signature dishes or followed different recipes for comparable meals. Defining the Neanderthal diet is as challenging as attempting to encapsulate a single human diet today. Just as Mediterranean diets differ from those in Southeast Asia, Neanderthals occupied such a vast territory that compiling a comprehensive food atlas is fraught with difficulty. Some foods, like meat, leave clear traces in the form of bones, while others, such as legumes and vegetables, do not. Sistiaga elaborates on this point, noting that plant remains are often elusive in archaeological findings. Techniques like dental tartar analysis have been employed to detect plant DNA or proteins, but results are often anecdotal. The plant fibers found in the teeth of various individuals could have originated from multiple sources, not solely through consumption. Consequently, animal proteins are overrepresented in the archaeological record, perpetuating the myth of hypercarnivorous Neanderthals. Yet, there is more to the story. A 2023 study revealed that Neanderthals in what is now Lisbon, Portugal, enjoyed charred seafood around 90,000 years ago. Further inland, a 2017 study found evidence of mushroom gathering and consumption among these early humans. Additionally, a 2011 review suggested that honey may have served as a significant energy source during that time. What remains indisputable is that the quest for nutritious food played a crucial role in shaping the genus Homo. A 2015 study indicated that the ability to cook may have emerged over 6 million years ago, and since then, the preference for cooked food has contributed to the development of the human brain, making it larger and more powerful. Cooked food is easier to digest and provides more calories than raw food in equivalent quantities. Evidence suggests that the optimization of flavor may have been a significant driver of evolution. And perhaps it all began with a piece of maggot-infested meat. Neanderthals' secret food source revealed: maggots. Picture this. Our ancient relatives, the Neanderthals, chowing down on handfuls of wriggling maggots right alongside their usual fare of roasted animals and plants. It's a surprising twist that challenges everything we thought we knew about these tough prehistoric humans, and it's backed by solid science from their bones. But don't worry, we're going to break this down step by step so it's easy to grasp, even if you're new to anthropology. You might have heard that Neanderthals were fierce carnivores, dominating the food chain like lions or tigers, feasting on massive amounts of meat. Well, a team of U.S. researchers is flipping that script. They've analyzed chemical traces in Neanderthal bones and concluded that these early humans weren't hypercarnivores after all. Instead, they likely included maggots in their diet, which came from meat they stored and let decay. And this is the part most people miss. While maggots sound gross to us today, they were probably a smart, nutrient-packed addition to meals in a harsh world where food wasn't always easy to come by. Let's start with the basics of how scientists figured this out. It all comes down to something called nitrogen isotopes, which are different forms of nitrogen atoms found in our bodies. Think of it like a food chain detective story. Plants have lighter nitrogen. Herbivores that eat plants build up a bit more heavy nitrogen, and top carnivores end up with even higher levels because they eat those herbivores. For beginners, imagine nitrogen 14 as the light version that's easier to get rid of, and nitrogen 15 as the heavy one that sticks around, acting like a marker of what you've been eating. Neanderthal bones show high levels of this heavy nitrogen, which used to suggest they were pure meat eaters at the top of the chain. But here's where it gets controversial. According to John Speth, a retired anthropology professor from the University of Michigan, Neanderthals simply couldn't handle eating that much meat without getting sick. Humans, including us today, can only safely process about 4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Compare that to lions, who can tolerate 2 to 4 times more. That's why true hypercarnivores like them thrive on a meat-only diet. Neanderthals, on the other hand, probably stored their kills for months, focusing on the fatty, energy-rich parts rather than lean muscle. As the meat rotted, maggots moved in, and those bugs ended up being a key part of the meal. Speth puts it plainly. Maggots were likely a major food source for them. To test this idea, researchers turned to some pretty intense experiments. Dr. Melody Beasley, who worked at the University of Tennessee's Forensic Anthropology Center, often called the Body Farm, studied donated human bodies as they decomposed. This place is all about understanding decay to help with crime scene investigations, like figuring out how long someone has been dead. Beasley measured nitrogen levels in rotting muscle tissue and the maggots feeding on it. She found that while the muscle had a slight increase in heavy nitrogen as it decayed, the maggots had much higher levels. That means if Neanderthals were eating those maggots from their stored carcasses, it could explain the high nitrogen signatures in their bones without them needing to be extreme meat eaters. This finding, detailed in a study published in Science Advances, isn't just about maggots, it's about rethinking Neanderthal life. Karen Hardy, a professor of prehistoric archaeology at the University of Glasgow, points out that many indigenous communities around the world still eat maggots or insects from decaying food as a normal part of their diet. For example, in some cultures, grubs are considered a delicacy full of protein, fats, and essential nutrients, much like how nuts or seeds might be for us. Hardy explains that for Neanderthals, it was probably a no-brainer. Leave out some meat. Wait a few days for the maggots to hatch, and then collect an easy, high-energy snack. This not only makes physiological sense, since their bodies couldn't handle massive protein loads, but it also fits with the nitrogen evidence better than the old hypercarnivore theory ever did. But here's where it gets controversial. Some people might argue that this interpretation overlooks other factors, like regional differences in diet or even contamination in the bone samples. Could there be alternative explanations for those high nitrogen levels, such as environmental influences or other food sources we haven't considered? And this is the part most people miss. While maggots provided a convenient protein boost, does this really change how we view Neanderthals' intelligence or adaptability? After all, using decay to their advantage shows a clever survival strategy, not unlike how some modern foragers innovate with available resources. So, what do you think? Does learning that Neanderthals might have munched on maggots make you see them in a new light? Or does it just reinforce how resourceful they were? Would you consider trying insect-based foods if it meant better nutrition in a tough situation? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to hear if this sparks any debates or changes your perspective on our ancient ancestors.